She was the eldest daughter, the responsible one, the provider, the sacrifice no one ever noticed. But when her family demanded her life savings for her sister's reckless dream, one word shattered her world: selfish. Walking away meant losing everything she thought defined her and finding the strength to finally define herself. As her parents' world collapses and her sister's lies unravel, Dearis must decide: return as the fixer they always exploited, or rise as the woman who sets the rules. In the ruins of family expectation, survival isn't selfish, it's freedom. Before I share how my family pushed me to the breaking point, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt pressured to sacrifice your dreams for someone else's? Hello, I am Dearis, 32 years old, and until 2 weeks ago, I carried the badge of the eldest daughter who always did what was expected. To my parents, that meant I worked hard, earned well, and sacrificed without complaint. To me, it meant carrying the invisible weight of responsibility that had been handed to me since I was a child. But on that night, at what should have been just another family dinner, everything shifted. My parents looked at me across the polished wood table and demanded the unthinkable: that I empty my life savings, all $75,000 I had scraped together over a decade, to fund my younger sister Isabelle's latest dream. When I refused, they did not argue numbers, projections, or risks. Instead, they cut with sharper words. How dare you refuse to help your sister? You have always been selfish. Selfish. The word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. For years, I had been anything but selfish. I was the one who studied late into the night, who worked part-time jobs to help with bills, who deferred dreams because my family insisted on practicality. And yet, in that moment, my entire identity collapsed into one accusation. I didn't shout back. I didn't cry. I simply placed my napkin on the table, rose from my chair, and walked out of the house I had once called home. For the next 2 weeks, I vanished. I turned off my phone. I took a leave of absence from my job. I packed what I could and moved to a tiny studio apartment in Seattle, a city far enough from Chicago that I could breathe for the first time in decades. It wasn't just about running away. It was about reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried under expectation and obligation. For the first time in my adult life, nobody was asking me to sacrifice. Nobody was measuring my worth by how much I could give up for someone else. I bought a second-hand chair and placed it by the window of my new apartment, a narrow view of a brick wall outside. Strangely, it became my favorite spot. That blank wall held no judgment, no demands, no memories of favoritism or forgotten birthdays. It simply existed, sturdy and indifferent, something I had always longed to be allowed to feel. In those quiet days, I asked myself questions I had never dared to consider. What do I want? What makes me happy? What would my life look like if I stopped living for other people's approval? The answers didn't come all at once, but I began to find small clues. A steaming mug of coffee enjoyed without rushing to another obligation. A walk through Pike Place Market, where the chatter of strangers felt more comforting than the silences of my family. A new friendship with Olivia, a neighbor who asked nothing of me except honest conversation. For once I was free. Then came the morning I turned my phone back on. I expected maybe a few texts, perhaps an angry voicemail. Instead, the screen lit up with 6 missed calls, all from my family. 6 voicemails, their timestamps spread across the 2 weeks I had been gone. My stomach tightened. I didn't press play right away. Instead, I just stared at the phone, buzzing against the countertop like an angry insect. Because I knew, deep down, that whatever those messages contained, anger, guilt, desperation, they would force me to decide whether my escape was a true beginning or just a pause before the same old story replayed itself. That's when I realized my story wasn't about selfishness, it was about survival.v. Family dinners in my parents' home had always carried a certain script. My mother served her famous pot roast, my father dominated conversation about the importance of hard work, and Isabelle, my younger sister, held court with her latest ambitions. My role was predictable: smile politely, ask questions, offer help when required. But this dinner was different from the moment I walked in. The dining table was set with the good china, porcelain plates reserved for holidays or major announcements. My father wore a crisp button-down instead of his usual weekend flannel. My mother's excitement was barely contained as she fussed over the placement of water glasses. Isabelle sat tall, laptop open, glossy presentation folders stacked beside her like she was about to pitch to investors, not family. "Dearis," she exclaimed, rising to hug me, "I've been waiting all week to share this with you." Her unusual enthusiasm made me uneasy. Isabelle and I had always been cordial, but never close. As the eldest, I had grown accustomed to being the responsible one, while she was free to chase whims that my parents framed as passion. After a rushed dinner, served pre-plated, another break from tradition, my father cleared his throat dramatically. "Isabelle has something important to present. Your mother and I have already had a preview, but she wanted to wait until you were here for the full reveal." The spotlight was hers. For the next 20 minutes, Isabelle dazzled the room with her grand idea. Soul Rhythm, a dating app powered by artificial intelligence. It promised 98% accuracy in predicting compatibility using personality assessments, social media data, and even biometric readings taken from smartphones. She spoke with polished confidence, her hands gesturing like a TED Talk speaker. My parents watched with adoration, nodding enthusiastically at every claim. But as I flipped through the folder with my name neatly handwritten on the cover, alarm bells rang. Where were the financial projections, the market analysis? Who was developing this sophisticated AI? When she finished, the room erupted in applause, except from me. "It's ambitious," I said carefully. "But may I ask some questions?" "Of course," Isabelle replied, chin lifted proudly. "Who is building the AI system?" "I'll hire developers, obviously. The concept is the valuable part, and that's mine." "Have you researched competitors? The dating app market is crowded." "This is completely different," she insisted. "Nobody else uses biological markers." "Because of privacy concerns?" I pointed out gently. "Have you consulted a lawyer about data regulations?" Before she could respond, my father cut in sharply. "Dearis, your sister doesn't need criticism. She needs support." "It's not criticism," I explained. "Any investor would ask these questions. These are basic due diligence steps." Then came the shock. My mother smiled brightly, her voice warm with excitement. "Your father and I believe so strongly in Isabelle's vision that we've already committed $50,000 from our retirement fund." My fork nearly clattered onto the plate. $50,000 from retirement? "Some things are worth the risk," my father said firmly. "We believe in your sister." "And that," Isabelle chimed in, eyes gleaming, "is where you come in. We need an additional $75,000 to secure the development team and launch marketing." The number hit me like a blow. $75,000, the exact amount I had been saving for nearly a decade. My dream of opening my own financial consulting firm depended on that nest egg. I stared at them in disbelief. "You're asking me to give up my entire savings?" My mother leaned forward, her smile soft but insistent. "Family supports each other. Isabelle has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Your practice can wait." My hands tightened around the folder. "I can't invest $75,000. That represents years of sacrifice. And this business plan," I flipped through the glossy mock-ups, "is not detailed enough to justify that level of risk." The room chilled. "You've always been jealous," Isabelle snapped, her eyes narrowing. "I chase dreams while you play it safe. Admit it, you don't want me to succeed." "That's not true," I said, stunned. "I want you to succeed, but responsibly." "If you really cared," my father thundered, "you wouldn't be raising obstacles. You'd help your sister, not tear her down." I looked at them, feeling the weight of decades, birthdays overlooked, achievements minimized, sacrifices dismissed as expected. And now, with one word, they stripped me of everything I had worked for. "Selfish," my mother said flatly, her voice cold as marble. "You have always been selfish, Dearis. Always keeping score, always holding back." The accusations sliced deeper than anything before. Selfish. After a lifetime of being the reliable one. Selfish. After working at 16 to cover bills. After taking the major they demanded. After swallowing every slight to keep peace. In that moment, clarity burned through me. I had never been selfish. I had been erased. The table sat heavy with silence, broken only by Isabelle's faint smirk of vindication, and I knew, whatever happened next, nothing between us would ever be the same. That night, after the dinner, I couldn't sleep. My parents' words echoed in my mind like a cruel chant. Selfish. Always selfish. I lay staring at the ceiling of my condo, the walls pressing in like they carried 32 years of expectations and disappointment. For years I had convinced myself that the imbalance was tolerable, that Isabelle being the golden child didn't diminish my worth. But the dinner had stripped away every illusion. My savings, my dream, my future, they had expected me to give it all up without hesitation, and when I didn't, they branded me selfish. By 2 a.m., I had made a decision. I would not stay trapped in that cycle anymore. The next morning, I drove across town to the nursing home where my grandmother lived. Grandma Lorraine was the one person in my family who had always seen me clearly. Where my parents measured worth in ambition and flash, she valued quiet perseverance. She was sitting in the garden, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm spring air, humming softly to herself. "Grandma," I whispered as I kissed her cheek. "Ah, my serious girl," she said, her eyes twinkling. "You have that storm look on your face. Sit, tell me." And I did. I told her everything. Isabelle's pitch, the $75,000, my parents, fury, the word selfish. My voice cracked as years of swallowed resentment spilled out. When I finished, she patted my hand. "Do you know what selfish really means, Dearis? It means living only for yourself, with no regard for others. That's never been you. You've lived your entire life for everyone else. Maybe it's time to learn a new word, self-preservation." Tears blurred my vision, but they'll never see it that way. To them, I'll always be the difficult one. "Then stop letting them define you," she said firmly. "Sometimes walking away isn't abandonment. It's the only way they'll ever realize your value. People don't change when you shield them from consequences. They change when the ground shakes beneath them." Her words landed like a stone in my chest. I had always believed loyalty meant staying, fixing, absorbing the blows. But what if Grandma was right? What if leaving wasn't betrayal, but the only way to break the cycle? That afternoon, I sat at my desk with a blank notebook. On the first page, in bold letters, I wrote, "Operation Consequence." It was half a joke, half a battle plan, but as the ink dried, the weight on my chest began to lift. I outlined 3 steps. 1. Remove myself from the role of fixer. No answering calls, no rescuing, no enabling. If my parents and Isabelle wanted to gamble with retirement money and houses, they would face those consequences without my safety net. 2. Build a new foundation. I had spent a decade saving for my own practice. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for approval and start building my life, on my terms, not theirs. 3. Set boundaries in stone. My love for them was real, but it couldn't come at the cost of my future anymore. If they wanted me in their lives, it would have to be with respect, not demands. In the following days, I carried out step 1 with quiet determination. I turned off my phone after work, ignoring the buzz of texts from Isabelle. "We need to talk. Can you at least look at the revised business plan? Then, fine. I'll tell Mom and Dad you don't care." Guilt stabbed me, but I held firm. Boundaries only held if you didn't crumble at the first pushback. By day 3, my parents left voicemails. My mother's tone was wounded. "We're family, dearest. Family sacrifice for each other." My father's was harsher. "Your sister has always supported you. Now it's your turn." Each message felt like a tug-of-war between obligation and freedom, but Grandma's voice rang louder. People don't change until the ground shakes beneath them. Step 2 was harder, but more exhilarating. I met with a small business advisor downtown, finally admitting out loud my dream of opening a financial consulting practice. Saying it to a stranger felt almost rebellious. Her response stunned me. "That's a solid plan. Your discipline and background in finance are exactly what clients want. You're not behind, Dearis. You're right on schedule." For the first time, I believed it. My sacrifices weren't wasted. They were seeds waiting for the right soil. And then, life handed me a strange gift. Isabelle cracked. Late one night, she called from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was ragged. "Dearis, it's not working." Investors laughed me out of the room. "Mom and Dad, they're so disappointed. I thought I could do it. I thought for once I'd make them proud without you, but I can't." For a moment, I didn't recognize her. My sister, the confident, glamorous favorite, was unraveling. "You don't need to make them proud," I said quietly. "You need to make yourself proud. But that means owning your choices." "I don't know how," she whispered. I wanted to rush in, to comfort her, to fix everything. But I stayed still, letting the silence press in. Because this was the moment of consequence Grandma had spoken of, the crack where change might finally seep through. That night as I lay in bed, I realized Operation Consequence wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. Isabelle needed to fall to learn how to stand. My parents needed to lose control to realize their favoritism had broken both daughters in different ways. And I needed to let go to finally be free. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time, the future felt like mine. Seattle was supposed to be my escape, a clean slate where the air smelled like salt water and the skyline shimmered with possibility. But freedom has a strange way of being interrupted by the very ties you think you've cut. It started with a message from Jessica. She had stayed in Chicago, and though we didn't talk every day, she was my quiet tether to the life I had left behind. Her email was brief, but the words pulsed with urgency. Your parents are in trouble. Isabelle's business collapsed. They're panicking. Call me. I stared at the screen, the cafe chatter around me fading into white noise. Part of me had expected this. Isabelle's revolutionary app had always been more fantasy than business plan. Still, the finality of it hit hard. I closed my laptop, heart hammering. Did I dare turn my phone back on? That night, I did. 6 voicemails blinked on the screen like little landmines. I sat on my bed, legs curled under me, bracing for detonation. The first was Isabelle's usual indignation. You're hiding because you don't care. This is all your fault. The second, my mother's guilt-laden plea. Families fight, Dearis, but we forgive each other. Your sister needs you. The third, my father's sharp reprimand. You've embarrassed us. We told people you were helping. Now we look foolish. But the fourth voicemail cracked the pattern. Isabelle's voice trembled. You were right. Everything you said was right. Investors pulled out. I don't know what to do. The fifth made me drop my phone. My mother sobbing. Your father's in the hospital. Stress. They say it wasn't a full heart attack, but please, we're losing everything. Please come home. And the sixth, Isabelle, broken. We mortgaged the house. Dad blames me. Mom can't stop crying. I need you. Please. You're the only one who can fix this. I pressed my palms to my face, fighting the tidal wave of old reflexes. For decades, I had been the fixer, the reliable one, the one who smoothed over every storm. And now, they were pulling me back into that role like gravity. But Grandma's words cut through the noise. People don't change when you shield them from consequences. I couldn't just jump on a plane, throw money at the mess, and pretend everything was fine. Not this time. Instead, I picked up the phone and called the hospital directly. The nurse assured me my father was stable, due to be discharged with medication for high blood pressure, not the crisis my mother had painted. Relief mixed with anger. At their exaggeration, at their manipulation, and at myself for still caring so deeply. The next day, I crafted a plan. If I returned, it would not be as the dutiful daughter ready to bail them out. It would be as the professional I had become, setting terms, demanding accountability. I contacted a financial advisor I respected and asked if he'd mediate a family meeting. To my surprise, he agreed. Then, with my heart pounding, I wrote an email to my parents and Isabelle. I've heard your messages. I know things are serious. I'm willing to help, but only differently this time. I've arranged a meeting with Robert Williams, a financial recovery specialist. Monday, 2 p.m. Bring every document. Retirement, mortgage, business loan. I'll attend via video. I will not write a check. I will not sacrifice my future. If you want my help, it will be with structure, accountability, and respect. Otherwise, you'll need to explore other options. My finger hovered before hitting send. It felt like a declaration of war and peace in the same breath. When I clicked, my chest loosened, like I had finally inhaled after years of holding still. Sunday night, I boarded a flight back to Chicago. The city looked the same from the window seat, rows of brick houses, the glitter of Lake Michigan. But I knew I was different now. I wasn't coming home as the scapegoat or the safety net. I was coming home as a woman with boundaries. When I walked into my parents' house the next afternoon, the air was thick with tension. My mother clutched tissues, my father sat stiff in his chair, and Isabelle looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. For once, no one rushed to hug me. Dearis, my mother whispered, her voice raw. Let's wait for Robert, I said calmly, setting down my bag. This time, we're doing this properly. And in that moment, I realized the confrontation wasn't just about money. It was about decades of imbalance, of favoritism, of silence swallowed whole. The ground was shaking beneath us all, and I was finally ready to face it. Chicago had always felt like a city of noise, honking horns, train tracks clattering overhead, people hurrying with their own burdens. But that morning, the hum felt louder than usual, pressing into my chest as I walked toward the cafe where Isabelle had asked to meet before the family's financial mediation. It wasn't neutral ground. Isabelle had chosen Perkins Cafe, the same place we'd met for countless sister lunches, where she usually bragged about her latest venture while I quietly picked up the check. This time, though, I wasn't there to listen and nod. I was there to face the sister who had helped tear our family apart. The cafe smelled of burnt espresso and cinnamon scones. Sunlight spilled across mismatched tables. Isabelle was already there, her laptop open but untouched, a cappuccino cooling beside her. She looked nothing like the radiant sister who used to dominate every family conversation. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and the designer blazer she wore seemed too big, like she was shrinking inside it. She looked up when I approached, her expression flickering between relief and dread. "Dearis," she said softly, as though testing whether I'd respond. I set my bag on the chair opposite hers and sat down. "You wanted to talk before tomorrow." She gave a small nod, closing her laptop as if conceding that her glossy presentations had no place in this meeting. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hiss of the espresso machine filled the silence. Finally, Isabelle inhaled sharply. "I messed up." "You don't have to say it. I already know." The words were so uncharacteristic I almost didn't believe them. Isabelle admitting fault? That was new territory. "You did," I replied evenly, "but admitting it is only the first step." Her eyes glistened, and she leaned forward, her hands trembling slightly around her coffee cup. "I thought Soul Rhythm was going to save me," she whispered. "I thought if I could just succeed at one thing, Dad would stop comparing me to you in all the wrong ways. Mom would stop worrying. I'd stop feeling like the fragile one." Her confession caught me off guard. "Isabelle, Dad never compared you to me. It was always the opposite. I was the practical one, the reliable one. You were the dreamer, the one they poured everything into." "I know," she admitted, her voice breaking. "But that's the problem. I couldn't fail. They never let me. Every mistake was cushioned, every debt covered, every bad choice excused. And this time, I thought, if I make it big, then it'll all be worth it." For a long moment, I just stared at her. The sister I had envied for years was unraveling before me, not because she had been held to impossibly high standards, but because she had been held to none at all. "Do you realize what you risked?" I asked, my voice low but firm. "Not just their retirement, not just the house. You risked Dad's health. You risked everything for an idea you never even tested." "I know," she said, louder than she intended. A few heads turned, and she lowered her voice quickly. "I know. And I hate myself for it. But you have to believe me. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I just wanted validation," I finished for her. "You wanted to feel like you mattered." She nodded miserably. The server arrived with fresh pastries, but neither of us touched them. I folded my hands on the table. "Here's the thing, Isabelle. For years I've been the one cleaning up after everyone. Paying bills, covering gaps, sacrificing my own plans. And when I finally said no, you called me selfish. Do you know how that felt?" She flinched, shame flickering across her face. "I was scared. I thought you'd abandon me." "I didn't abandon you. I refused to enable you. There's a difference." Her shoulders sagged, and for once she didn't argue. Instead, she whispered, "So what happens now? Tomorrow, at the meeting, what are you going to do?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. "I'll help," I said carefully, "but only under new rules. I'm not handing you a cent unless there are legal agreements in place. I'm not sacrificing my future for your gamble. If you want my support, you have to start pulling your weight, get a job, pay back what you can, stop expecting to be rescued." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't look away. "And if I don't, then I walk away again. And this time, I don't come back." The words tasted like steel in my mouth, but they were the truest I had ever spoken to her. For a while, she just sat there, wiping at her eyes. Then, slowly, she reached across the table, not with entitlement this time, but with something rawer. I don't deserve your help, she whispered, but I want to try. I don't want to be the reason Dad collapses again. I don't want to be the sister who ruins everything. I didn't take her hand, but I didn't pull away either. Tomorrow will tell, I said quietly. It's time to face the consequences, together or not at all. As I left the cafe, the spring air hit my face sharp and cool. For the first time, I felt the balance shifting. Isabelle had cracked. The Golden Sisters' armor was gone, and what remained was flawed, frightened, and maybe ready to change. Tomorrow, in that sterile financial advisor's office, we'd find out if my family was finally ready to grow up. The next morning, I walked into Robert Williams' financial office with my laptop bag clutched tight, my palms damp. I had barely slept, replaying my conversation with Isabelle at the cafe. She had promised change, but promises were cheap. Today would determine whether any of us were capable of actually keeping them. Through the video call, Robert's conference room looked polished and intimidating. Long oak table, neat stacks of paper, glass walls reflecting sterile light. My parents sat on one side, Dad pale and stiff, Mom wringing a tissue to shreds. Isabelle sat between them, her eyes swollen from crying, but her back straighter than usual, as if she was bracing herself. When Robert began, his voice was steady, professional. We're here to discuss immediate steps to prevent foreclosure and secure a path toward financial stability. I've prepared formal documents based on the options we reviewed. The sound of paper shuffling filled the room. Dad cleared his throat, glancing briefly at the camera. We've made mistakes. We know that. But we're a family, and families fix things together. Families don't fix things by hiding behind me, I said before I could stop myself. Not anymore. Mom flinched, but Robert intervened smoothly. Let's focus on solutions. The first is refinancing your mortgage. The second is a structured family loan, which your daughter, Dearis, has agreed to consider under specific conditions. At that, all three of them turned toward me, the tension in the room tightening like a rubber band about to snap. I drew a breath. If I provide financial assistance, it will not be a blank check. These are the conditions. I read from the document I had drafted with Robert's help. 1. A legal loan agreement with repayment terms, interest, and collateral. Not a gift, not an open-ended lifeline. 2. Mandatory family therapy sessions for at least 6 months to address the dynamics that created this mess. 3. Isabelle must secure employment within 30 days and begin contributing to household expenses. 4. Recognition of my independence. My savings and goals are for my future, not the family's emergency fund. My voice didn't waver, but my heart hammered. This was the line I had never drawn before. Dad's face reddened. A contract? Between family? That's insulting. No, I replied calmly. It's accountability. You taught me contracts are essential in business. Why should family finances be treated with less care? Mom spoke next, her voice small. Therapy? Do we really need strangers involved in our private matters? We need it, I said firmly. Otherwise, we'll be right back here in a year. You've enabled Isabelle all her life, and I've been expected to carry the cost. That ends now. Silence stretched, broken only by Isabelle's quiet exhale. She surprised everyone by speaking first. I'll sign. Dad turned to her, incredulous. Isabelle? No, Dad, she interrupted, her tone sharper than I'd ever heard. She's right. I've lived like the rules didn't apply to me. And look where that's gotten us. If she's willing to help, then the least I can do is meet her terms. The room froze. For the first time in years, my sister wasn't demanding more. She was agreeing to responsibility. Robert slid the documents across the table. These agreements are standard. Once signed, they'll provide a clear framework for moving forward. Dad's hand hovered over the pen, his jaw tight. Mom whispered something to him I couldn't hear, but finally he picked up the pen and scrawled his name. Mom followed, her signature shaky. Then Isabelle, slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial, pressed her pen to the paper. When they pushed the documents back toward Robert, I felt a shift. Small, fragile, but real. Still, Dad wasn't ready to let go of control. You're really going to hold us to this? To legal documents? To therapy? His voice trembled between anger and disbelief. Yes, I answered quietly, because I want this to work, but I refuse to lose myself in the process again. For once, he didn't argue. His shoulders slumped, and he looked older than I'd ever seen him. After the signatures, Robert summarized the plan. Refinancing would ease their immediate burden, my structured loan would cover the shortfall, and Isabelle's employment search would begin that week. Family therapy was scheduled for Tuesdays. It was all so ordinary, signatures, schedules, plans, but beneath it ran a current of something extraordinary. For the first time, we weren't pretending. As the meeting closed, Isabelle glanced at the camera. Her eyes were red, but her voice steady. "Thank you, sis. I don't know if I can make this right, but I'll try. I promise I'll try." I nodded, but inside I whispered to myself, "We'll see." Because signing a paper was easy, living by it would be the real test. That night, as I walked back through Seattle's damp streets, the rain tapping softly against my umbrella, I realized the documents weren't just about money. They were about rewriting the rules of my life. No more silent sacrifices, no more invisible worth. For the first time, the balance had shifted, and I intended to keep it that way. The week following the signing felt strangely quiet, like the stillness after a thunderstorm. But quiet did not mean peace. My phone buzzed daily with updates, some encouraging, some frustrating, all reminders that change doesn't happen overnight. On Tuesday evening, our first family therapy session took place over video call. I sat at my small kitchen table in Seattle, my laptop camera pointed at me. On the other end, my parents and Isabelle huddled awkwardly in the living room. Dr. Morales, the therapist, opened gently. "This space is for honesty, but also respect. Patterns don't change easily, but awareness is the first step. Let's begin with why you're here." I hesitated, but then spoke. "I'm here because I love my family, but for years I felt like my worth was measured by what I could provide, not who I am. I want that to change." Mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Isabelle's face softened in a way I wasn't used to. The first few sessions were brutal. My parents clung to their belief that they had just been supporting Isabelle's dreams. But Dr. Morales gently peeled back the layers, showing how their choices had created damaging patterns for both daughters. At one point, Dad admitted, "I thought Dearis didn't need us. She always had it handled. Isabelle didn't." His words stung, but Dr. Morales turned it into a revelation. By assuming one child doesn't need you, you risk neglecting her entirely. Responsibility doesn't mean invulnerability. For the first time, I saw my father look ashamed, not defensive. Meanwhile, Isabelle began her job search. The first week, she came up empty. No callbacks, no interviews. Old Isabelle would have sulked or made excuses. But to my surprise, she pushed harder. She called me one night, her voice tired but determined. "I sent out 20 applications today. I didn't realize how behind I am, not just with skills, but with discipline. I've coasted too long." "That's a big step," I told her, honestly proud. "Just keep going. Consistency matters more than quick wins." 3 weeks later, she landed an entry-level marketing job. Modest pay, long hours, but it was a start. And for the first time, I heard something new in her voice when she told me, pride untainted by entitlement. My parents struggled more. Downsizing expenses was humiliating for them. Mom cried when she had to sell her beloved antique china set. Dad grumbled when Robert recommended tutoring to supplement income. But each sacrifice became a mirror, reflecting the choices that had brought them here. Slowly, grudgingly, they began to accept accountability. "Maybe we should have guided Isabelle differently," Mom admitted during one therapy session. "And maybe we leaned too much on you, Dearis." The word maybe wasn't enough, but it was a crack in the wall that had stood for decades. For me, Seattle became more than an escape. It became a place of rebirth. At Cascade Financial, I quickly found my footing. My new manager encouraged me to design workshops on budgeting, retirement recovery, and women's financial independence. Standing in front of those small groups, teaching skills that had taken me years to learn, I felt something my family had never given me. Validation. Olivia, my new friend, cheered me on. "You light up when you teach," she said one evening as we watched the sunset from the marina. "It's like you finally stepped into the life you were meant to live." Her words settled into me like a truth I had always known but never dared to believe. 6 months after the signing, I flew back to Chicago. Not for rescue, not for obligation, but for choice. Walking into my parents' home, I noticed small but significant changes. The house was tidier, less weighed down by excess. Dad looked healthier, thinner, calmer. Mom hugged me with a sincerity that felt different, less performative. Isabelle greeted me at the door with ink-stained hands from jotting notes in a work journal. At dinner, the conversation didn't revolve around Isabelle's latest pursuit. Instead, Mom asked about my workshops. Dad wanted to hear about Seattle. Isabelle listened quietly, nodding thoughtfully, as though she was practicing being the sister I had always needed. It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was progress. After dessert, Isabelle pulled me aside. I've been making payments into the family account. It's not much yet, but I'm serious about paying back what I can, and I've started therapy on my own too. Gambling addiction group, financial literacy course. I don't want to repeat the past. I studied her face, looking for the familiar traces of arrogance. But what I saw instead was humility, maybe even gratitude. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. It means more than you think. She smiled faintly. You were right about everything. I just didn't want to admit it. That night, lying in my childhood room, I reflected on the journey. 2 weeks of silence had forced a lifetime of patterns to unravel. A confrontation at a financial office had redrawn the rules. Therapy had cracked open conversations we had all avoided. And somewhere along the way, my family had begun to see me not just as the reliable provider, but as a daughter, a sister, a person. But more importantly, I saw myself. Not through their lens, not through their expectations, but through my own. The following morning before I left for the airport, Dad stopped me at the door. His voice was rough, hesitant. Dearis, he said, I don't say this enough. I'm proud of you, not just for helping us, but for knowing when to stop helping the wrong way. You saved us, yes, but you also saved yourself. And maybe you saved this family too. The words caught me off guard, but this time, I didn't dismiss them as too little. Too late. I let them in. Back in Seattle, I unlocked the door to my apartment and set down my suitcase. The city felt alive around me, rain-slick streets glowing under neon lights, ferry horns echoing across the bay. I realized something profound. The outcome wasn't just about my family surviving financial collapse. It was about all of us learning a new definition of family, one where love wasn't measured in sacrifice and where my worth was no longer invisible. Walking out hadn't destroyed us. It had rebuilt us. And for the first time, I felt free. Here's what I learned. Sometimes the most selfless thing you can do for your family is to stop being their safety net. By walking away, I finally taught them, and myself, that love without respect isn't love at all. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're the foundation of real connection. If my story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life family dramas with powerful lessons. Share this video with someone who might need the reminder that it's okay to say no, even to family. And tell me in the comments, what boundary changed your life?